Unique Ways with Thomas Gerard emerges with people from all walks of life who, through their own unique angle, succeed and flourish. Enjoy the ride and welcome to Unique Ways, an audio podcast. Hey everyone, welcome to Unique Ways with Thomas Gerard, an audio podcast. Got a really great guest on today. He's a British-born, Dubai-raised product designer with in-house and agency experience and a penchant for creating impactful solutions to pressing problems. Please join me in welcoming Alexander Morris. Welcome.
Hi, Thomas. Thanks for having me. And thanks for the ever flattering intro. It's much appreciated.
Are you ready for 20 questions?
Of course.
Question 1, tell me a little bit more about yourself. What do you do?
So I'm a product designer. I think that's quite an all-encompassing term, and it's obviously not a way to define a person. So I got my start studying computer science. I then quickly realized that it wasn't really for me. So I started working in an agency in Dubai. It's fantastic, and I'm sure anyone who's worked at agency would know, extremely hectic and busy kind of domain to be working in. Spent some time there and eventually decided to move to the US and do my master's in interactive design. It's an incredibly eye-opening experience and really kind of provided a formal and solid foundation to go on to then work at companies such as Kin Insurance and IBM over in the US. Lately, though, I've been working remotely as a product designer at Jadu AR Inc. We're a global AR studio, trying to push the AR medium and experience to directions and areas that it hasn't been before.
Great, I love it. So question 2, what's a key piece of knowledge that makes you different?
That's a difficult one. That's quite a hard one. I think that's kind of the beautiful thing about life, and specifically design actually, is that we're all quite different. So I wouldn't say that there's a specific thing or piece of knowledge that makes me any different, but I'd say a piece of knowledge that has shaped me is just learning to embrace that difference and look for the moments in between that, the differences between people, and use that to enrich my own experience. From that, I think it really gives you, at least for myself, an outward expression and a more holistic perspective to try and work from, and to try and do work around things that I have encountered throughout my life. Yeah.
Great, and just a quick note for the audience, if you guys are interested in a recent big episode, check out the episode with Yves Behar, really great guy. So question 3, why this of all things? Why do you do what you do?
I think there's quite a few things. Obviously, I think with product design and design work in general, there's a surface level creativity, which is immediately quite gratifying. It's something where you're very productive and outwardly productive. You can see your work and it's on display and it's there and it's more tangible than perhaps other domains. Beneath the surface of that, if I was really to be quite introspective, I'd say I'm a massive people pleaser. I always have been, and I'd say that really fuels me in the work that I do. It's the opportunity to connect and provide value to people. I grew up quite isolated and very shy as a kid, and I think through that I started to really just observe and learn people, more as a means of getting by, but it was how people react to things and what they think about or what they say, and that's something that I very much still do and practice day to day. I think it's really helped me to significantly inform the work that I do. I think it's very easy to look at, a user flow and see what a user does and where they end up, but it's much harder to quantify and really anticipate what they experience in the gaps along that journey. I've given a lot of thought to that, and I think it's really what motivates me to do product design and to really care about the user. It's a marriage of creative expression and being able to provide tangible meaning and value to people is really what draws me to this kind of work.
Nice. So some people struggle with number 4, but the question is, what does your future look like?
It's definitely an uncertain one, as with anyone, but to take stock of where I'm at right now, I would say to make sure where I have been, where I'm at, is that I hope it's brave. I hope it's a lot of failure, and that might sound like quite a bizarre thing to say. I'm not sure, what you've heard from other guests on the podcast, but if there's a lot of failure in it, it means that I've been trying. And for me, that's one of my greatest fears really in life, is to live a life of convenience. To to do what is there and what is available versus trying to forge your own pathway through that and do what you would like to do,
Mm,
against all, the noise you might have in your head or what other people might be saying.
mm,
So to be able to do that against all of those kind of fears and worries, I think that'd be a wonderful thing.
mm. Awesome. Okay. Number five, we say is unique to this show. The question is, let's talk about location. How does the notion of place play into what you do?
It plays a big role in what I do. I think it's a funny thing. I think it's quite contradictory, but it holds as much meaning as it lacks in my life personally. I think from your intro gave a little bit of an insight to it, but I was born in Scotland, and then moved to Dubai at the age of 1. Growing up there, it was difficult in the sense of, you're not able really to have any sort of permanent residence or any sort of citizenship. So growing up, I really had to try and detach myself from the place that I was, knowing that it was very much just temporary, and that can have a big impact on people in a lot of ways. Made it very hard to have a solid foundation from which to form that kind of sense of identity. Um, and I think that's, whilst a privilege, it led to a lot of moving around, a lot of going here for studies, education, for work, and it's a trend that's followed me throughout my life.
Mm,
And I'm sure, as many other third culture kids would tell you, it's quite a struggle.
mm,
On the other hand, though, it is also quite liberating, to simply be and to not be, but become based off of the place you grew up, um, to become who you are because of yourself and solely yourself, and not what anyone else says you should be, or who others are. I think that's a great opportunity. I think it tears down a lot of those barriers. The world is only as big as you really make it to be out to be, and that applies to what I do. If you want it, it's out there, but sometimes you might have to go and get it. You might have to go to it itself. And that's something I try and practice throughout my work. It's very easy to stay in a bubble, but you might not be exposed to as many opportunities or different perspectives if you do that.
nice. And one more note for the audience, if you guys are interested in this term, third culture kid, check out the episode with Keith Tam. It's an early episode. He's a Hong Kong-based educator. Question six, if you had to start from the beginning, what advice would you give your former younger self?
To not be scared. I think I alluded to it before, but I think it's, that fear. It's something I've always struggled with, worrying about doing the wrong things or not being good enough, or what someone might say about me if I was to fail. To limit yourself out of fear, I think it's a shame, because we can all achieve so many great and wonderful things in our lives if we're able to put that fear aside. And I'm the worst for this. I think it limits yourself quite a bit. Specifically, it's something I've very much struggled with. And sometimes you just need to take a step back. You need to be able to look at things and put that fear to the side, and then take that step forward and be vulnerable in who you are and what you do. I
Mhm.
think on the other side of that fear, I think, if you listen to a lot of great people, it's something they echo, is that on the other side of fear is really where life is. And when you're willing and able to put yourself there through that fear, and run through it and get to the other side, it's really where we're able to grow, and where life happens.
Mhm. I like that. Okay, number seven, what's a day in your life like?
Without glorifying it too much, I think it's very easy to do that. Look at it through rose-tinted lenses. It's not always that exciting. It's not always that wonderful. But working remotely, it's very dependent on the day, and also where I am located. If I'm back in Dubai, it means I often work, some later calls with the US team members. So sometimes I'll get a later start. I'll typically actually the day before kind of anticipate, what does tomorrow look like. If I don't have any later meetings in the evening, I'll get an earlier start. If I know I'm going to, I'll get a later start instead. Try and balance that work and life a little bit.
Mm,
Typically, I'll hop on some early morning calls. Our design team is mostly European based, a super talented design team spread across London and Pakistan and Dubai. So just catch up with the team, check in how everyone's doing, expectation around deliverables, get the latest there. Then I'll try and work through, some of those upcoming priorities and deliverables. Make the most of, obviously with a remote team, the time zones. If you know that you've got to get something going, you got to connect with another shareholder on something, stakeholder, reach out to them before they clock off for the day, and then typically in the evenings, to wrap up a day, hop on some calls with the US team, maybe around 8, 10 p.m. That'll help to inform the next day's work, upcoming work. If not, though, I'll try and wrap it up a bit earlier, take the evening off and relax a little bit, maybe go for a run, catch up on the rest of the kind of wider design world and things going on out there.
Nice. Okay. Number 8, lifelong learning is a popular topic. How do you stay up to date?
Yeah, I think it's quintessential. Typically, I mean, if you're in product design and user experience design specifically, the work that is out there that is circulating, it's a culmination, an amalgamation of a lot of people's different perspectives and insights, and can often be a bit of a zeitgeist for where the industry or various domains are. And so one of the best ways that I found to keep up with that is design Twitter or X nowadays. Just building up a good following of other designers or industry related accounts. It can really, really keep you up to date with the latest developments, events, and also expose you to some really, really inspiring work and great designers out there. Once the algorithm kind of picks you up, it doesn't just show you huge, international studios or creatives out there. You'll actually get a lot of work that's being shared around by upcoming talents around the world, and then that's actually a very inspiring thing. In contrast to that, though, I'd say another strong source of learning is also the past. Looking back to design work from the 50s, late 90s, and even early 2000s can shed light on a lot of really interesting patterns and different motifs and emotions that we might neglect in our current day. A lot of those things maybe don't exist for a reason, but it's still interesting to explore them. Otherwise, we can get a little bit in a bit of a vacuum of seeing the same kind of work all the time. So it's good to keep an open mind and an open eye out there.
Great. Okay. 9 is about tools. Do you use both digital and analog tools?
Mostly digital, I would say. I think, as you go remote, it's a lot harder to integrate more analog tools into your workflow, specifically around like product design. Um, I think there's that barrier where you can have your analog tools, and they're great and they function perfectly within your domain, but when you try and share that, it ultimately is going to convert it into some digital manifestation at some point. So
Hmm.
definitely in the earlier on stages of the design process, it can be great to pull out a notepad, jot down different ideas, quick sketches, wireframes, and some thoughts around flows. But ultimately, that work I find always at some point ends up in a digital medium to share, whether it's a FigJam or Figma file somewhere, Google Doc or such. I'd say that I kind of run a gamut of different tools that I use. It's when it comes to visual UI work, industry standard nowadays is Figma. So those kind of core tools will stay the same. When it comes to motion interaction design, it's a lot of After Effects, Cavalry work, as well as Spline for some 3D stuff. And then when you get around to prototyping, it could be Play or Origami. I try and really keep an open mind when it comes to tools because whilst, the industry is based around some key ones, new technologies are always emerging and different perspectives on how to be productive are constantly coming up. A great example of that is Rive. I mean, it's taking the design industry by storm, really, over the last perhaps a year or so. The way that they're handling handoff, and kind of this node-based approach it's a really different perspective, and it looks like in a lot of different organizations a godsend for designers and developers in terms of achieving a high quality of handoff and polish in your final product. So not to say on the administrative side, there's not also a lot of Google Meets, Slack, and Asana as you might expect, but those tend to get a little bit less shine than design-related tools.
Great. Okay. Halfway number 10, work-life balance. How do you deal with it?
Yeah, I think I'm very fortunate to work as a really part of a wonderful team of extremely talented and respectful designers at Jardu that really values work-life balance. So as long as we're working as a unit and a team and our deliverables are being met, that I don't experience much pressure from that end. Of course, that's entirely context dependent. Something that's a little less context dependent for me is dealing with pretty severe ADHD, and I know there's a lot of other designers out there who do as well struggle with this, and I'd say that's a bigger challenge. So there's a lot of work-life balance issues that I face that are largely more self-imposed, although you don't particularly get a say in whether you have ADHD or not. So I think following a stricter routine helps me a lot, as well as making sure to get plenty of exercise, to eat quite cleanly. I think it's very easy for things to snowball when you work remotely, and it's also a lot easier for you to start to neglect yourself as well. Throw in changing time zones into the mix as well, and it can get quite difficult there.
Right. Okay. If you weren't doing what you do now, what might you be doing?
Looking at the trends of the kind of things that I gravitate towards and the work that I do, I think
Mm,
anything that just allows me to connect with people and to shine a light on the human experience. I really, really love street photography. It's a burning passion of mine. It's one of those things that really captivates me, and every time I go out to shoot, I never know what I'll see. It doesn't matter where I am, there's always going to be something interesting happening if you can view it through the right perspective. And I think that active perception, it, uh, it really makes me try and anticipate the scenes that play out and to create something out of the chaos. And that is a really invigorating experience, and it makes me feel quite alive. I think in a day and age where we produce so much noise and media, thanks to social media, to share something that's representative, that lasts and has staying power
mhm.
against everything else that's out there, I think that's really something special. And so, well, it's definitely a more challenging route. If I wasn't a product designer, I think I would definitely take a stab at going full time with street photography.
Nice. And what would you not like to do with your career?
In contrast to that, probably not something that is around value extraction. I don't think I'd be very well suited to it. So that'd be, I guess, anything that's about taking more than it is giving.
Mm,
I think there's a necessarily evil in there, of course, with the way that, you know, economies and countries are structured and businesses themselves. I think that, yeah, there's a necessary evil there, and it exists in all facets of work to varying degrees. Um, but the idea of functioning primarily to take, I think that's quite dehumanizing to me. Um, and it's something that I'd struggle with quite a bit.
do you have a favorite word, quote, or sentence?
There's a lot of each of those things. To keep it more simple, I think the word care is something that's extremely important to me, and that's to care for others, to care for yourself, but also to take care in what you do. It's very easy with a lot of the pressures that are there of, you know, we have to live, we've got to exist in a difficult world, and we've got to make our means to do that.
Mhm.
And as a result of that, you get pulled in a lot of different directions, and sometimes you might have to compromise on what feels right to you or what you'd prefer to do. And I think it's important to not lose that care no matter where you are in what you're doing. Even if there's small moments to find it, that can completely change your perspective around something you might have to do. Maybe there's a task that you really aren't looking forward to doing, but maybe there's a small part of it that you actually deeply care about, or the outcome you might care about, and that can really be kind of shone a light on and used as a motivation for it. And so I really try and champion that in the things that I do and the way that I exist. Try and not lose sight of that.
Great. And a least favorite word, quote, or sentence?
I think this one's a much easier one to come up with, and maybe
Mm,
that's a pessimistic perspective, but it probably the word can't. I think it's extremely limiting and quite suffocating. Um, it's easy to say, and I think that's the worst of it, is that it's extremely easy to say, but the impact of it is extremely hard to shake. Um, you can throw it out there and say it about something or someone, you can't do this or you can't do that. Um, but the implication of that is, you know, it doesn't go away as easily. And I really believe that anyone can try anything. That whilst the outcome isn't certain, the ability to try is always given. And to shut that down, either for yourself or for someone else, I think is a shame. So I try and avoid that as much as possible.
nice. And you're choosing one word to describe yourself. What word do you choose?
To be completely candid, I'd say scared. When I look back at my life, I think that's one of the things that's defined me a lot is being scared. But it's also, on the other hand, pushed me to be who I am, and it's pushed me to do a lot of things that I have done and want to do. It's the the fear, as I said before, of like not being good enough, not doing enough, failing. What will people think? What does that mean about you if you do fail? Um, and that's extremely limiting, but it's also extremely motivating if you choose to push back against it, and take it from a different perspective. Um, I think that would be a shame to live a life where you are scared, and it's okay to feel it, but to let that own you and define you, and suffocate you, um, it's not a good thing. And so it's something that I've always felt in a lot of ways. I think with life, I've learned to turn that perspective around and actually turn it into a very positive thing. Some of that fear, and not let it control me. So yeah, I would say scared.
Great. 16, what keeps you up at night?
More than my ADHD, I think it'd be the fear of not living, and I think that comes back to the word scared.
Mm-hmm.
Um, is to say no more than I've said yes. Um, it could be to live inauthentically, or to live a life without impact. I think that's something I think about a lot. When you're sat there at the end of the day, of however old it may be, and you look back, did you make the right decisions? And I think when I think about that, it's not necessarily around what are things that you did right, but did you do things? And it'll be easier to sit there and regret the outcomes of certain things than it is to regret not trying them or not doing them. Um, and so I think a lot of sleep has been lost over that, but hopefully it'll be worth it in the long run.
Nice. And final stretch here. What's a dream you're chasing?
I think there's a couple of things that I'm working towards lately, for the last few years, and I alluded to it with the answer of, if I wasn't a product designer, what would I be doing? And that's I've been chipping away for a long time at a photo book. It's a mixture of street photography from a lot of my travels,
Mm.
kind of a full circle thing with the working remotely, and user experience design, and connecting with people is it's something that, I really just want to shed a light on people in our current moment and the things that are happening. And it's something that I hope to publish, and in the coming years. And ultimately, it's to try and raise money for autism and neurodiversity research, and charities. That's something that's quite close to me, and around the idea of human connection and existence. I think it's paramount for us to shine a light to. Another idea that I've been looking at and working on quite lately. So I guess it's a dream. It's in its infancy, but I'm working on an app. I think this is one of those steps when you talk about a fear, that I'm trying to take. It's early days, but it's a layer of social abstraction. It's making an increasingly large yet isolatingly small world feel a bit more connected. It's around human ideas and expression rather than identity and attention, and we very much live in a attention economy nowadays. And so that's something I'm exploring. I hope to put out there in the next year or so, and run with it.
Great. And what inspires you?
Um, there's a lot of things that inspire me every day. I think the small battles that people fight every single day, that's extremely inspiring. I think to be and to exist, it could be a really hard and very scary thing. So when someone does something, no matter what it is, or takes a chance, that's a beautiful thing. And I feel that extremely strongly. Um, it could be, telling someone something you've been scared of saying, or it could be putting something out there that you're worried might not resonate. But to do it, to make it, and to be vulnerable enough to share it, yeah, that's extremely inspiring for me.
Great. And last couple here. Any advice you'd like to share?
A lot of people come from a lot of different perspectives. It's impossible to anticipate what someone has experienced or who someone is. Um, but so long as we approach that with care, I think that's an important thing. Care and understanding, and we understand that everyone is trying, no matter what it is. We live in a very, very hard world, and so to be vulnerable and to care, that's important. It takes a very brave person to be vulnerable, and we're all just trying our best. And I think that's something that, um, in current times, it's extremely important if we could all remember that.
Great. And finally, number 20. How can our listeners keep tabs on you, and what's our call to action?
I'm not the best at staying up to date in the social world. Um, you can follow me on X or Twitter at Alexander Morris, except the L is a capital I. Unfortunately, that's one of the downsides of having a pretty generic name. And then if you want to keep up with any of my street photography travel adventures, I share that over at Time in a Circle on Instagram. A call to action, just be you, be authentic and true to you. Um, if you have something you want to try it. Don't let the fear of failure shut that down. And I'm sure only wonderful things will come from it.
Great. Well, thank you so much for going through the questions. Juggling time zones is always the thing. So glad to do that with you. Thanks.
Always welcome, Thomas. Thank you for having me.
If you liked today's podcast, I encourage you to have a listen to other episodes. You can easily find them at uniqueways.ca or wherever you find podcasts. You can also find us on social media. And thank you. It's you that makes these great, and it's you who these are for. Stay tuned for more unique ways.